Welcome to this course, Green Economy, from China's Stories. In this section, I would like to introduce the origin of the low-carbon economics theory. As a branch of economics, the origin of low-carbon economics stems from almost 400 years ago. The entire history of low-carbon economics can be divided into 3 stages. The first stage, we can call it the infant stage, roughly start from the year of 1776, when Adam Smith's masterpiece, The Wealth of Nations, was published, and ended before the World War II. This is a period when classical economics and neoclassical economics got developed, and during this stage, the works of Adam Smith, Ricardo, Malthus, and Marshall provided a lot of materials for the concept of low-carbon economics. The second stage of low-carbon economic theory is associated with the rapid development of modern economics. We can call it the development or growth stage. This period starts from the World War II to the 1990s. During this period, sustainable development, limited theory of growth, and circular economics have come into being, which provide theoretical foundation for low-carbon economics. From the 1990s to now, low-carbon economics has kept improved. We call it the immature stage. This is the third stage. More specifically, during 1999 to 2000, after Scott Brown proposed a theoretical analysis framework for low-carbon economics. Let's recall the infant stage of low-carbon economic theory. Adam Smith has been regarded as the father of modern economics. In 1776, Adam Smith's An Inquiry into the Nature and Causes of the Wealth of Nations, commonly referred to simply as The Wealth of Nations, was published. In fact, in The Wealth of Nations includes the thought of low carbon, that is, resources use optimization. In this stage, lands and labor were taken as research subjects. Smith emphasized that the wealth of a nation comes from production field, and that we should put priority to production. Adam Smith also takes labor and lands as production factors and stresses public production inputs in production. We can see that the sustainable use of natural resources has been included in classical economics, which can be seen at the sprout of low-carbon economics. Then, Malthus, an English scholar and influential economist in the fields of political economy, raised the question of how population growth related to the economy. He holds that whenever the food supply increases, population will rapidly grow to eliminate the abundance. Eventually, in the future, there would not be enough food for the whole of humanity to consume, and people would starve. As a result, the demand for necessaries of life will exceed what the lands can produce, and the population will become the biggest constraint on economic growth. His views about subsistence increase become influential and controversial across the economy, political, social, and scientific thought. Although Malthus didn't use the word ecology, he is regarded as the earliest ecological economist. David Ricardo was a British political economist, one of the most influential of the classical economists. He holds that because of limited land, after all land has been used up, the diminishing return in the agricultural sector will slow down the growth of economic development. As a result, the natural resources will eventually restrict economic growth. He has emphasized the optimal use of the natural resources. In his masterpiece Principles of Political Economy, John Mill opposed the endless exploitation of nature resources and believed that there is a limit to natural resources. Therefore, he argued that natural resources, population, and wealth should be kept on a static and stable level. Based on those previous research, Marshall's Principles of Economics digs further into natural resources and environmental economics, and provides detailed discussion on the role of natural resources as a factor of production. It can be seen that many ideas of low-carbon economics are implied in the works of the classical stage and the neoclassical economics stage. The context of this stage is the first Industrial Revolution, rapid economic growth, as well as the excessive use of natural resources, especially minerals, fuels, and raw materials. This situation is reflected in the works of classical economists, who are most concerned about two issues. The first is how to improve the efficiency of resource utilization, and the second is whether the economic growth is sustainable. Malthus are pessimistic to the second question. Since classical economists focused on constraints on resources, supplies, wealth, production, and economic growth, the price-decisive theory became the dominant value at the stage. According to the price-decisive theory, the financial value of a product is the costs for producing the product, including the manufacturing costs, expenses, labor, and other things required. In the world, in the infant stage of low-carbon economics, the classical and neoclassical economists at that time have provided a necessary theoretical foundation and analytical tools for the emergence of low-carbon economics. Now, let's take a look at the modern economic stage. This period, also called the development stage, is from the beginning of World War II to the 1990s. This period can be divided into two parts. The first part is from the beginning of World War II to 1920s. During this period, scarcity of resources has become one of the most concerned issues. From the end of World War II to the early 1980s, resource economies primarily focused on scarcity of resources and then on sustainability. It can be seen that economists have always been thinking about the relationship between economic development and natural resources. How to use limited resources properly to support economic development has always been the basic question for economists, and also an important source of thought for low-carbon economics. The most important representative theory in this period is the limited growth proposed by the Club of Rome. This book mainly reflects the contradiction between demand and productive capacity. The second is the spaceship economic theory proposed by Baldwin. In his book, he put forward a view that the use of resources should not be linear, but be circular to form a closed-loop system. Let me introduce Club of Rome, who proposed the limit to growth theory. Club of Rome is a global thinking tank that deals with international environment issues. The purpose of the club is to study impacts of technology revolutions on human development. At present, the club is mainly engaged in publicity, prediction, and research on global issues. This club was established in 1968 and released its first global environmental report in 1972. That is, the limit to growth, which proposed that the growth of human society has limits, and we should reach a balance between the economy and the environment. Or, in other words, we should probably balance our population growth, resources usage, and environment protection when pursue the improvement of living standards. Then, circular economics has stemmed from spaceship economic thoughts proposed by Baldwin. So what is circular economics? A circular economy encourages the efficient and the reasonable use of raw materials and energy in economic activities. In a circular economy, the waste produced in the production link will become raw materials for the next production link, thereby minimizing the consumption of resources. It is about resource conservation and environment protection. The second stage of low-carbon economics theory is from the 1980s to the 1990s. At this stage, low-carbon economics mainly focused on sustainable development. During this period, with the development of industrialization, the environment lost its ability to purify itself and gradually became a regional problem. In 1992, the United Nations Conference on Environment and Development put forward the concept of sustainable development and proposed that sustainable use of resources should be taken into account as a prediction for economic development. Then, sustainable development concept and low-carbon technologies spread around the world, which raised a high tide of low-carbon system construction in different countries. Meanwhile, breakthroughs have been made in low-carbon technology, combined with sustainable development concept, promoting low-carbon economic practices. Then, an interesting question is, what is sustainable development? It refers to the development mode that should not only meet the needs of contemporary people, but also does not hamper the well-being of future generations. Well, we are done with the origin of the no-carbon economic theory. Thank you. See you next time.